Good evening, everybody. It's so wonderful to hear the hubbub, to see the flowers outside on this lovely spring evening. Thank you for taking the time for a wonderful YSN tradition. It is just fantastic to invite and welcome everyone to the Yale School of Nursing's 19th Creative Writing Awards. So I just have to say, and you can feel the energy in the room, right? It's such a delight to be back in person, right? To see each other and to have that experience. Because it's been 2 years of COVID Zooming, right? Including for this event. This is a YSN tradition of ours that is really cherished, and we want to thank Linda Honan and colleagues who really created and nurtured and kept, this tradition of this event going. And it's really the celebration of nursing creativity and expression of writing. The power of words to process, convey, and commemorate the nursing journey and experience is so very valuable, and we are grateful for this tradition at YSN. So I'd like to also start by thanking all of our students who submitted their creative work at a very busy time of year for the contest. In many ways, writing is an intimate and personal activity, and submitting your writing for assessment, it takes its own kind of courage, but you all are brave, as we know. The submissions were moving, contemplative, innovative, and unique, and illustrated the power of nursing and midwifery when paired with storytelling. So one of the many things that the COVID pandemic has taught us, and we've all had our experiences with it in different ways, is that there's really no substitute for a nurse or a midwife telling their story. I would also now like to thank our panel of judges who had such a tough time narrowing the field down to the final three, but we'd like to thank Janine Batten, our YSN's reference librarian, Holly Kennedy, our Helen Varney Professor of Midwifery, Heather Reynolds, Minority Student Coordinator in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and Christine Rodriguez, Director of the Simulation Lab. So thank you to all the judges. Tough job. So before I welcome our featured speaker to the podium, I would really love to congratulate our three amazing winners from whom we're going to hear their stories read aloud. So FNP student, Sajni Prasad, for My Most Dearest Ruthie. PNP student, Michaela, Gabriela, Serafico, for Dancing in My Golden Turno. And FNP student, Gayleen Tieta J. Ulrich, for Paperwhites. So just to note, each winner will receive a cash prize of $1,000, and we all look forward to hearing them read their work tonight. It's the reading that we are caring about, remember? Okay. The panel would also like to recognize three honorable mentions. Doctoral student Elizabeth Choa from More Than. Midwifery student Taylor Evans for Someone's Somebody. And FNP student Rachel Romero for My Village. So thank you, everyone. I would now like to welcome PNP student Michaela. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Rushing ahead. And now we're so pleased to welcome our speaker for tonight, Beth Cavanaugh. She's a certified hospice and palliative care nurse, author, and storyteller. And she started to write because she said nurses have a story to tell. And it just came out of her as she began writing. Her latest book is The Power and Pain of Nursing: Self-Care Practices to Protect and Replenish Compassion. As her recent book most aptly illustrates, the science and art of compassionate care needs to extend to ourselves also as caregivers to replenish that font of care for patients and communities. Now, as a token of our appreciation for coming all the way to Connecticut to speak to all of us, I'm really happy to present Beth with a Yale pen. So this is another tradition at Yale. This pen was made from a massive sugar maple tree that grew behind the rectory of the Divinity School, so right on this campus. And it's been engraved with Yale School of Nursing as a nod to the celebration of our students writing at this beautiful space here at the Divinity School. The tree began dropping its branches and had to be removed in the fall of 2015. A brief prayer service was held the day before the tree was removed, where the community offered thanks for the role this tree had played for many decades in the life of the school. So it's a lovely story, and we're going to have a wonderful speaker. Welcome, Beth Cavanaugh.
I'm leaving for Hawaii tomorrow, so I'm glad it's just a pen. Thank you. So I had been a nurse for a decade by 2006 when I decided to give hospice care a try. And it was in this beautiful hospice home in Portland, Oregon, where I felt like I landed professionally. That same year, I took care of 2 patients who shared the same room. We'll call them Velma in bed 1 near the door and Louise in bed 2 near the window. There was this curtain drawn between the 2 patients that offered this false, ridiculous sense of privacy. Louise, near the window, was actively dying, which meant she'd probably die in the next few hours. I was in the room often, managing her breathing and tending to the family. Every time I walked into the room, I'd wave to Velma near the door, and Velma was doing fine. She was alert, oriented, engaged, doing the crossword puzzle. She would sometimes summon me to her and ask me questions like, "Hey, what's the name of a flightless bird? 3 letters." She could obviously hear everything in this tiny room. Her neighbor's respiratory changes, the sobbing daughter, the chaplain's anointing ritual. Louise died peacefully that afternoon, surrounded by her family. After I pronounced her death, I was walking out of the room and Velma motioned me to her. And she said, "Hey, did my neighbor just die?" And I told her, yeah, she did. And she said, "Is that how I'm gonna die, like that? Peacefully, without any pain or struggle?" And I told her, I don't know exactly how you're gonna die, and not everybody dies the same way, but our mission at the hospice home is to make sure everyone dies in peace and comfort. We try our best anyway. And then I described what it would look like to decline. I told her that she'd get more fatigued, she'd spend more time in bed, she'd sleep a lot more, she'd eat less, and it would be hard for her to swallow. And then she just wouldn't wake up one day. And she said, "I didn't think dying was gonna be so easy." The next day, I went to work, and I kid you not, Velma had drifted into a deep sleep, never to wake again. She died the following day with her family sitting next to her at the bedside. In theory, Velma should have survived another couple of weeks, but I believe she was able to relax into her death. I'm an early morning riser, like 4 a.m. early. I love the darkness and silence, especially in a house of 5 humans. I wrote this story about my patients the next day. I was sitting in an overstuffed chair, I had my cup of coffee, and 2006, I had pen and paper. I didn't have my laptop then. And I was new to writing then in 2006, but since then, writing has and continues to be one of my early morning rituals, and I often write about my nursing experiences. Writing continues to energize my love and passion for hospice care. It helps me to metabolize so many of the emotionally difficult things I see on my shifts, and it also continues to reinforce and crystallize the power in my professional role as a nurse. So as I wrote that early morning, I thought there must be so many humans like Velma who don't know what death typically looks like. Her story energized me to write about death and dying, and I continue to blog about end-of-life care today. I want to soften the fear surrounding death in our culture. I want people to know what to expect when they're dying, when their family's dying. I want families to have the courage to sit at the bedside of their loved one so they can usher them into the next mystery with love and blessings. I feel like if this was the cultural norm, we would not be so afraid of our death. We could maybe acquiesce in a state of grace. A decade later, in 2016, I cared for a patient with terminal agitation. He was restless and agitated for 2 hours. The doctor and I were working together, titrating his medications. His bedbound body was in constant motion. His wife and daughter were standing at the bedside, terrified. The son-in-law was in the corner of the room, also terrified. The entire room was in distress. And if nurses had the option to medicate family members, I would have bought a round of Ativan for this room. Don't you wish we could do that? So the doctor and I collaborated, titrated his medications, his morphine, his Haldol. The patient finally began to settle, and the family also could relax. So shortly after, the patient began to exhibit what's called Cheyne-Stokes respirations, which signals the end is getting close. They asked to talk to the physician, and the physician went into the room, and he came back like 10 minutes later, ghostly white, and he goes, the patient just died. And I looked at him blankly, and he said, I've never been with a hospice patient when they've died. And I was like, wait, what? Oh my God. And wait, I'm taking orders from you? The next morning, I rose before the sun. I made my blessed cup of coffee, sat in a beanbag chair, this time next to my easy-to-light gas fireplace. I owned my laptop, and I wrote about this story. And as I wrote, I got chills, and I still get chills thinking about it because it was a game-changing event for me as a nurse. There's this strange hierarchy in medicine, doctors above nurses, and it's nurse practitioners, and it's nurses, and it's CNAs. It was so easy for me to feel apologetic, doubtful, less than on my shifts, believing the doctors had so much more knowledge than I did. And they do, it's just a different kind of knowledge. It finally dawned on me that nurses have a critical vantage point. This is a decade later. We see what the physicians do not see, often what the families don't see, definitely what the politicians don't see, certainly what the healthcare administrators don't see. Writing about this event helped me to crystallize the power in my role as a nurse, as an advocate and an activist for my patients. So now I'm still kind and respectful when I call the doctors for orders, but after that day, realizing my hospice doctor had actually never been with a dying patient, I never lead with, I'm so sorry to bother you, because they need us just as much as we need them. About a year later, another hospice patient was dying from cancer. He was young, 52. He had a nasogastric tube inserted into his nose, and he could only tolerate popsicles and ice chips. He had a flat affect the entire 3 weeks he lived and died in our hospice home. His sister was a Buddhist. As soon as she flew into town, this tiny little room morphed into this beautiful meditation room. She brought in salt lamps and crystals and flute music. Family and friends were instructed to remove their shoes before they went into the room. Nobody should ever remove their shoes in a medical facility. She also taught the family how to meditate at the bedside. I was so into it. I loved walking into the energy of this room that she had created. My patient continued to be just stoic and withdrawn. So one day, I sat down next to his bedside and I asked him, hey, how you doing? And he goes, Beth, I climbed Mount Hood 4 months ago, and now I'm lying in this bed dying. How do you think I am? And after a very long, uncomfortable silence, I asked him, is there anything that can give you strength right now? Anything you can draw on? I assumed his Buddhist beliefs would help him in this time. And he looks around the room and he goes, Beth, I don't believe in anything. I'm an atheist. All this stuff, this is my sister. This is not me. And I was wrecked. His sister hijacked his death. Because my patient did not have the clarity nor the fortitude to even know what he wanted, let alone ask for it, she assumed she could take over, and she did. Early the next morning, I rose before the sun, walked up the stairs to my son's old room. He had moved out about 5 minutes before this, and I converted it into my office, and it included a bed, a desk, and my very first piece of artwork that I bought just because I loved it, not because it went with the neutral tones in my house. So I plopped myself in the bed under the fuzzy blanket, and I began to write about my patient, and I was pissed. I wrote feverishly about hospice and patient autonomy. In that one sitting, I wrote a 22-page document. I desperately wanted everyone to know that when they are dying, they are the star of the show. This is their final chapter to write, not the Buddhist sisters chapter. So my anger rose, it crested, it crashed, and eventually, like years later, it subsided. But writing about this story allowed me to metabolize the sadness and the rage that I felt. And this 22-page document became a 230-page book about hospice that I completed 2 years after that. And my book is written like a love letter to a hospice patient with this guy's story in my head. So many people told me, not the best marketing move to write a book to a terminally ill patient as your target audience. But I could not shake this story. As you all know, nursing is a holy profession. We get to be with our patients and their families in their sacred moments of suffering. You will see firsthand the harsh realities of our life, our choices, our misfortunes, and our systemic failures. And you will also experience the grace and the grit of humans. We get to watch our patients survive despite all scientific odds, recover from devastating cancers. We watch wounds heal and spirits heal. I encourage you all to write. Writing about your patients will energize you as you steep in those sweet spots in the work that you do. And leaning into these amazing, impactful moments will increase your compassion, satisfaction, and buffer you from crashing and burning. Writing is a profound way to crystallize the power in your role and remind you of your why. It can help you to process your own grief, sadness, outrage that you will inevitably experience. You gotta give these emotions the time and attention they deserve so they can move through you. So when you sit down to your own version of a bed, a beanbag chair, an overstuffed chair, just write to write. Let the depth and the richness of your nursing profession seep into your bones. Thank you.
That's good.
It's a pandemic, you know.
Thank you for that, Beth. Wow. Just going to take a moment with it. That was beautiful. And now we turn to our writers. So I want to welcome up here F&P student Sajni Prasad to the podium to accept the award and to read My Dearest Ruthie. And I have also her certificate to give. So.
Short people problems. I have to use a stool. Okay. So I wrote this in honor of someone that I lost recently, so bear with me if I start to choke up or anything. But it's called My Most Dearest Ruthie. Vulnerability is a notable strength for you, my dear Ruthie, to lie in your hospice bed, exposed to the pain and discomfort of your ever-growing tumors. First, it started in your ovaries, then it crept up your spine and everywhere in between. It was like a spiderweb engulfing and suffocating every living, breathing organ within your once agile and healthy body. Vulnerability is a notable strength for you, my dear Ruthie, to lie in your hospice bed, exposed to the constant itching and urge to bear down. Deeply breathing in and doing your best to relax while I place a suppository to relieve your angry, antagonizing hemorrhoid. Wincing in pain, frowning eyebrows, breathing out slowly through your parched lips, a single tear somberly dropped from your sunken face. Yet, you are a champ, my dear Ruthie. Vulnerability is a notable strength for you, my dear Ruthie, to lie in your hospice bed, exposed to your fears flashing rapidly before your solemn eyes. This hemorrhoid will heal, right? It won't always be like this, right? I won't be suffering, a burden to those around me, unable to fend for myself like I once was. Could I have done something more to not be like this? You asked me as your voice quivered. Being a nurse is a humbling strength for me to sit empathetically by your bedside, honoring these profound moments with you, exposed to your vulnerability that you bravely shared, exposed to your warm yet fragile hand as I held it gently. Being a nurse is a humbling strength for me to sit attentively by your bedside, holding back my tears, exposed to the reality of your health's rapid decline, exposed to the delicate art of consoling you and offering you comforting words. Being a nurse is a humbling strength for me to sit helplessly by your bedside, wishing to have a God-given power to take away all your anguish, exposed to the difficulty of setting aside that wish of mine, exposed to the balancing art of explaining to you, and without scaring you, my dear Ruthie, that, as reality will have it, your stage 4 ovarian cancer is ravaging your entire body and will continue to do so. That even though you were exposed to nausea, drowsiness, incoherence of your surroundings, loss of appetite, all induced by a 1/4 milligram of oxycodone, you must consider taking the full 1/2 milligram dose of oxycodone as originally prescribed. Or pain and discomfort is what you will continue to feel. You must consider taking the newly prescribed methadone, or pain and discomfort is what you will continue to feel. While we understand that you thoroughly hated the unnerving side effects that you felt the first time around, you must choose between sleeping pain-free or being awake filled with this current agony. May you understand that we only want what's best for you, and that means for you to hopefully choose to be comfortable and at peace leading up to your passing. My dear Ruthie, if you would ever so kindly listen to me and believe with every bone in your body that you have nothing to fear, for we will be by your side every step of the way. You are not and will never be a burden to us. You are currently nearing the end of your journey on this physical plane we call Earth. Need I remind you of your very own words? God is good. God is loving. God is greater than your fears. God is waiting for his angel to return home. And it is with your unshaken faith that he will guide us and not let you suffer for more than needed. We will be here by your side, doing what we most deeply and passionately love doing, caring for you like our very own and doing everything in our power to ensure you are not in any pain till your very last breath. So, my most dearest Ruthie, when you are ready to go, may you simply go, for we will find solace in knowing that you are called back to your Maker's everlasting home. Thank you.
So next, I'd like to welcome PNP student Michaela, Gabriel, Serafico to the podium to accept the award and read Dancing in My Golden Turno.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Dean Kurth. I want to thank the judges for this honor and recognition, and also congratulate my fellow awardees, Galen, Sajni, Taylor, Elizabeth, and Rachel. So this piece is dedicated to my fellow Filipinos who are part of or a product of the labor diaspora. So I wrote this piece after the Annie Goodrich Ball, where yes, I did literally dance in my golden terno, to help me process and navigate this personal history that I have with nursing as a Filipina American. So thank you so much for letting me be heard tonight. So a terno, also known as a mestiza dress, a Filipiniana, or a Maria Clara dress, is a traditional Filipino dress. Characterized by large butterfly sleeves, it is a symbol of the rich and resilient Filipino culture. Filipino immigrants comprise 4% of the national nursing workforce. Yet, we accounted for 26.4% of COVID-related deaths in 2020. As detailed in Catherine Sinisa Choi's Empire of Care, the United States has a history of relying on foreign Filipino labor to address the nursing shortage. Dancing in my golden terno, my sleeves command attention in the room, a room full of nursing scholars celebrating the annual ball. I wish my diasporic heart could gleam as brightly as this dress shines and shimmers. Though I feel many eyes on me, I have never felt more unseen. These beautiful butterfly sleeves feel heavy upon my shoulders as I feel the weight of 26.4 woven into the pleats. Labor from those who look like me hold this healthcare system together at the seams. But like the seams of my dress, they remain invisible, not to be perceived. As my hem sweeps the floor, I wonder whose names have been swept away in this history that many have tried to erase. This history of Filipinos who answered the call to do no harm, even when they themselves are harmed. Wage gaps, hate crimes, exploitation. I feel these way as I carry my culture on my sleeves. My sleeves, which once felt so light and airy, have become so exhausting to bear. In this choreography composed by colonization, those who took up the white man's burden set the stage by creating schools, built to silence our languages and assimilate our minds, so we could build our empire of care abroad to reign and leave our homeland drained. I wonder how heavy my Lola's sleeves felt when she left the Philippines, 9 kids in tow, for Watsonville, California. Serving the community hospital for decades, her sleeves must have been seen from near and far. My mom felt the call too, her sleeves made here in the States. Her compassion drives her nursing process, and her tenacity makes her great. She reminds me of who gave me my sleeves that I now wear on my shoulders. My matriarchs, the ones who came before me in this profession of care. So now I take on the Pinay's burden, answering the call to serve, even if this generational trauma is sometimes too great to ignore. The ones who came before me shaped this profession of healing. And now they give, and now they give me the tools to find healing in my journey too. So I will stand on their shoulders, their sleeves as tall as mountains, holding my head high, my sleeves as visible as can be, as I dance in my golden terno to the beat of nursing school. Thank you.
Always so powerful a night, so thank you. So finally, I'd like to welcome F&P student Galen Chetji-Ulrich to the podium to accept the award and read Paperwhites.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Galen. Thank you so much for hosting and for having everyone and gathering. And thank you to our speaker, to Beth. I'm thinking a lot about your words around grief and dying and patient autonomy, and I'm thinking a lot about it in the context of this poem I wrote. And if tears come, they come. So this is a poem for my mother, and it's called Paperwhites. My mother's garden bloomed each spring: tulip, narcissus, magnolia, redbud, forsythia. The budding faces, promises after long hibernation. And each year, she would position paperwhites at the window. I would watch their roots crowd the ball jar of water, wait for the familiar scent to fill the house. Towards the end, she would not leave bed often, but when she did, the garden appeared tidy, the paperwhites newly arranged. I could not adequately prepare for the exchange of roles. Daughter became mother. Nurse became patient. It was a slip into eternal winter, a season of grief that did not thaw. Without her, the pilgrimage for paperwhites ushers in an end and a beginning. It is the perennial reminder of her impact and my own choice to step into a profession that gently, unassumingly, carries rebirth, grief, acceptance. It is one in which she is forever present as the seasons of change continue to unfold. Thank you.
Well, powerful evening. Thank you all for being here, for coming out and for experiencing and listening to these deeply moving pieces, The Power of Nursing Illustrated, and our wonderful YSN students, of course. We also want to just thank the people who helped put this lovely night together. And so thank you, Neve Emerson, Lauren Langford, Wesley, and Lynn Haverson at YDS. So everyone who helped put the night together, thank you.